Do you think that you like being in like around that tavern saloon environment, like as a kid, do you think that kind of made it easier to like interact with, like as a young kid going to the comedy store and, you know, kind of starting out doing that and being on the younger side? And it was just, do you think it was easier to communicate with the adults and kind of get them to take you seriously? Because you had that, like, I've been around this scene, because I always say, like you said, comedians love to do all their business and stuff in a bar. Like everything takes place in a bar, and they got a bar in the comedy club and they got a bar in this. And so all like it just kind of, do you think that was played a
Yeah,
part in it?
I think for me, it certainly developed my personality. I was a bartender when I came out of the service in the same bar my mother had been a bar in. It had a new owner, and I attended bar in two different places. One bar was a lot of couples would come in, and the other bar you served two beers and broke up a fight. Then you served two beers and you broke up a fight. Doing that all night long. But growing up in that environment, um, it develops character or it won't. Could destroy your character or it develops your character. It depends on your personality. First, let me digress from it. 85% of all, this is my humble opinion, 85% of all stand-up comedians I met in my life are insecure, neurotic, sometimes psychotic, loved, starved wrecks, total, absolute wrecks. And the other 15% are gifted, confident people who say, I know how to write a joke and I know how to tell a joke. I like to think that I'm in the latter, but never trust somebody that tells you they're sane. But so when you're around comedians, I don't want to make this dark, but I've known 5 great stand-up comedians who committed suicide. I know another 20 comedians who destroyed themselves with drugs and alcohol that were funny people, and that's why I give motivation speeches to the comedians. When I did it in Philadelphia, I did it in New York, I did it in Boston, I did it in Chicago, and in LA. I call it, my motivation speech is called The Joy of Stand-Up Comedy and How to Get There. How to enjoy this wonderful journey as a stand-up comedian. If you're an insecure, neurotic, sometimes psychotic, love-starved wreck, when you're poor and unknown, when you're rich and famous, it doesn't get better, it gets worse, because you thought rich and famous was going to take away all that angst that you have. So that's what I talked to them about. I helped them develop this perception, and how to visualize and self-talk, what to say when you talk to yourself, and then develop a sense of humor, learn to laugh at yourself. One of the things I tell comedians, one of the biggest pitfalls all comedians have is that you compare yourself to another comedian. Well, I started out with Scotty, and Scotty's doing the Fallon show, and I was doing it a year before him. I always tell them that there's a great Hindu proverb that said there's nothing noble about being superior to another man. True nobility lies in being superior to your former self. Am I a better friend than I was last year? Am I a better son than I was last year? Am I a better father than I was last year? Am I a better comedian than I was last year? Look over you listen to your tapes, look over your notes. Have you grown it's your only competition your whole life? And I tell them, I said, I stand in front of you and I tell you I'm a success. I'm a success as a stand-up comedian. And you know what my critics would say? Bullshit. You're a success? You started out with David Letterman. You started out with Jay Leno. They got $1 billion and 180 cars and 200 motorcycles, and you call yourself a success? I say, yes, because I never compared myself to David Letterman or Jay Leno. I only wanted to be the best Tom Dreesen that I could be. I didn't want to be better than Jay Leno or better than David Letterman. First of all, in comedy, that's all subjective anyhow. Because who makes you laugh? If you're Aunt Edna makes you laugh, then, she's the funniest person in your world. So comedy is subjective. But learning to enjoy this wonderful journey we're on as stand-up comedians. Guys, I don't want to get on a soapbox here. Look, the insurance companies of America for 8 years went around the world doing the 10 fears of man. What are the 10 fears of man? They did a survey. Death was 4th. Pain was 2nd. Getting up in front of an audience was the number 1 fear of mankind. If you can get up in front of an audience and you can talk about being a house painter for an hour, or a lawyer, or a bricklayer for an hour, you're in less than 1% of the population of the world. If you can get up and make people laugh for an hour, you're in less than 1/1,000,000th of 1% of the population of the world. Do you know how fortunate you are to have this gift? Now, laughter is healing. That's not a theory anymore. It used to be a theory. It's not a theory. We've always known that laughter is psychologically deterrent because the brain can't think of two thoughts at the same time. It simply can't function two thoughts at the same time. So if you're laughing at a comedian, you're not thinking about your problems. So it's a psychological deterrent. But now, because of Norman Cousins, the man who was the editor of Saturday Review, who was dying of a terminal illness, and the doctors told him it was stress, his heart, that he didn't have long to live, that the years of stress was causing this heart ailment. He laid in the hospital. He thought, of negative input, stress made me ill, then positive input should make me well. So he went out of the hospital and he'd only watch I Love Lucy reruns, Candid Camera, Three Stooges, the Marx Brothers. He would listen to comedy albums. He never watched the evening news. He never picked up the evening newspaper. He lived 27 years after he was told he was going to die.
Wow.
Because of him, UCLA did research on what happens to the human body when it laughs. And when you have this hearty laugh, where you laugh so hard and tears are running down your eyes and you go, oh, this sense of well-being, it's because your body's gone through an actual chemical change. So laughter is not only psychologically deterrent and it's physiologically therapeutic, then comedians are physicians of the soul. So you guys can call me Dr. Dreesen if you want. But
absolutely. I would believe it. Oh, go ahead.
But that's my point. I tell comedians, that's who you are. Don't waste that. Don't destroy that brain of yours with drugs and alcohol. Don't do that. If you need drugs and alcohol to get you up on stage, you're not really a true comedian. Come from your spirit. Are you nervous? Are you scared? Of course, we all are. You think it's easy to walk out in front of 20,000 people who all came to see Frank? You think I'm whistling Dixie? But we learn to work under those conditions.